My episode on physical abuse led me to this one. And this is a little bit, I think they're intertwined. This is about emotional abuse, and they usually come hand in hand. But, actually, I should say, when there's physical abuse, there's usually emotional abuse. If there's emotional abuse, doesn't always mean that there's physical abuse. So, sometimes they blend together. Sometimes it starts out just as emotional abuse and leads into more than that. But at any rate, the basis of emotional abuse is control through manipulation. So this basically the abuser is undermining the mental health of the victim by bullying, by verbal abuse, by rejecting them, their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions. They could also be gaslighting them. And gaslighting is, it's very common, and it's very hard to detect sometimes if you're not clear on what it is. Gaslighting is when you start to doubt, someone is gaslighting you. When you start to doubt your own thoughts and your own feelings, maybe even your own sanity, because of the manipulation by the other person. So they can turn your words around. They can just tell you that when you're trying to share your feelings, they tell you that you're crazy. They tell you that that's not true. They'll make it about something you did instead of something that they did. They'll make it into something else than what you're talking about. They'll bring up something that has nothing to do with it just to confuse you and turn the entire situation back around on you and make it your fault. And this happens often. And I think actually sometimes when people are doing the gaslighting, they don't even realize it. So I think it's definitely something that, people are learning more and more about, and that's good because we all need to be aware if someone is gaslighting us or if we are gaslighting others. I think if you've been raised in a home where it's common, I think that you pick it up and it becomes one of your behaviors, like a lot of things. And to be able to see when it's happening is really, it's really important, because then you can either stop yourself if you're gaslighting people, or you can, stand up for yourself when it's happening to you. And keeping in mind, if you can keep in mind that is happening, it will help you navigate situations. Once I learned what gaslighting was, I was able to detect it in conversation, and then I was able to navigate those conversations better. I was able to see clearly. I was able to not fall into the trap and not start questioning myself and not start, doubting myself and my point. And also I'm able to then reiterate my point and say, no, this is not about that. This is about this. And it helped me gain clarity in every situation. Every relationship, I should say. Just learning what that is. But the main thing that I talked about with physical abuse and now with emotional abuse is control. And as a victim, you lose control, and as that happens, you lose sight of what's right and what's real and how you should be treated. And in that, you lose your self-worth and your self-esteem. And you start to doubt yourself. And you slowly begin to defend yourself less and less. And, knowing that these things are happening, even being aware of them, it doesn't always, being aware of them doesn't always protect you from the damage. So, I think that there's not very much information about what these things are and how they happen. They're they're like broad statements, just abuse in general, domestic violence in general. That's such a broad statement. And I think to say that, to call it that is broad. It's a broad topic. And I don't know that a lot of us understand what all of that is and what falls under that. A lot of people don't want to believe that they're being abused. There's a certain amount of denial that goes on. And it's to protect the abuser a lot of times. It's to protect yourself from, you're living in fear. So if you admit that you're being abused, then you need to do something about it. And change is scary. And standing up for yourself is even more scary when you have been treated like this. If you've grown up in a home where you've watched someone be treated like this, or people treat each other like this, it becomes normal to you, and then you're not able to, notice it as much when it's happening. I think that it happens in friendships. I think there's a lot of subtle emotional abuse that happens in friendships. I think that it's maybe not so obvious, maybe not a lot of friends call each other names and yell and throw insults at each other, but just rejecting a friend's idea constantly, just kind of like belittling them subtly. I was in a relationship with someone that after time I started to realize that they weren't interested in any of my ideas. And I would mention them and this person would just say, "Oh no, we're not doing that." And then they would just talk over me. And which upset me because I have a lot of really good ideas. And I was like, why is this person why am I so angry all the time when I'm around this person? Why is this so hard for me to relax and be around this person? Why am I dreading when I have to see them? And I had to start to notice, I had to start to pay attention, and I started to notice, what was going on and how that made me feel. And I don't know that person is even aware that they do that. So once I was aware, I was able to limit my time with them, limit the ideas I offered, because I knew that they weren't going to hear them. And I basically was able to create space between myself and that person. Because I had to realize I don't have any control over the way this person treats me. Even if I say that, even if I confront them and say to them, when you do this, sometimes when I speak, you say things like this, and it makes me feel A, B, C, and D. I can say that all I want. But unless that person is interested in admitting to that and looking at themselves and realizing that what they're doing on their part that's affecting other people, unless they're interested in that, I can't change them. And I had to do what I could on my end to improve that situation the best that I could, based on what I knew. So once you're aware of these things, and once you realize them in relationships, you can make changes for yourself and set boundaries for yourself so that you can avoid being controlled through manipulation by someone else, being verbally abused, being rejected, being gaslit. Once you know these things, then you can protect yourself. And, I said something in the episode about physical abuse. I referred to finding people or finding someone you can trust. And if you don't have that support from somebody, you're going to stay silent. And what I want to say about that is, there were some people in my life when I found myself in the situation where I needed to make a decision to exit that particular abusive relationship that I was referring to. There were people that I would consider close to me, even family members, that did not understand what was going on, and they didn't know how to respond, and they didn't want to believe what was happening. Therefore, they didn't support me. There were people in my life that blamed me, and in their defense, they don't understand the cycle of abuse, so they just look at me like, well, why are you letting this happen? And that judgment did keep me quiet for a long time. But then when I finally was ready, there were people that didn't have the capability of supporting me through that. And it's not because they don't care about me or love me. And it's not because they don't want to be there for me. It's because they just don't understand. So when I said that and I spoke about that, I wanted to be clear that I had to find people. That's what I meant. I had to find people that, and there wasn't that many. I had to find people that I could go to that were not going to judge me, that understood abuse, that were going to be open and hear me and allow me to make my decisions that I needed to make without judging me and without pushing me. And without treating me like I needed to be doing something differently and be doing something according to their standard. So, I'm not saying this to talk bad about those individuals. I'm saying it because, not everybody is able to meet all of your needs all of the time. And you have to find in each situation, who can I go to? Because it was discouraging for me when I didn't have support from people and I kept going to them in need of certain things that they weren't able to give me. And that almost slowed my own momentum down in that situation. It slowed down my healing. It slowed down my, process of change, because I was listening to people that didn't understand the situation I was in and didn't have the tools to be there for me and support me and understand me. So again, it's my hope with these, these topics, talking about these topics, it's my hope that we can come to a better understanding, not just in our own lives and in our own relationships, but for other people that we know. That's really actually more important than we realize. Being there for people, or allowing people to be there for us, or identifying if the people there for us are able to be there for us in whatever situation that we may need them in. So I hope this finds you well, and I hope that it offers you something, and I feel a really strong pull to share things, again, with this intention, that it would shed light on someone else's situation. And that it would bring hope to them, and understanding, and resolution maybe, and steps towards health, steps towards change. Thank you for listening to the Queen of Serious Talks. If you feel that this podcast would benefit a friend, please feel free to share it with them. And if you'd like to support this podcast, there is a link in the description. Thanks again. This podcast was recorded with Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other listening platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast in one place, and it's free. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. The content provided on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only, and as a self-help tool for you and your own use. If you are in need of support, please do not delay in seeking mental health advice from a professional. I am not a mental health practitioner. I am simply sharing my own experiences here on this podcast.